This podcast is sponsored by the Tree of Life Memorials and Digital in Stone. This is a new platform to create digital memorials, environmental legacies, and fine art monuments. This way we could share the stories, preserve the memories, conserve the land, and connect the souls, because love never dies.
This podcast does not provide medical nor legal advice. Please listen to the complete disclosure at the end of the recording.
Hello, and welcome to Everyone Dies, the podcast where we talk about serious illness, dying, death, and bereavement. I'm Marianne Matzo, a nurse practitioner, and I use my experience from working as a nurse for 45 years to help answer your questions about what happens at the end of life.
And I'm Charlie Navarrete, an actor in New York City, and here to offer an every-person viewpoint to our podcast. We are both here because we believe that the more you know, the better prepared you are to make difficult decisions before a crisis hits.
So welcome to this week's show. Please relax, get yourself something strong to drink and some pie, or maybe 2 slices of pie.
And maybe 2 drinks.
And thank you for spending the next hour with Charlie and me as we talk about the death of complicated parents. Like the BBC, we see our show as offering entertainment, enlightenment, and education, and divide that between our 3 halves to address each of these goals. Now, between you and I, we know there aren't 3 halves, but go with it. Our main topic is in the second half, so feel free to fast forward to that prattle-free zone if you need to. In the first half, Charlie tells us about John Brown's grave and has a ding-dong of a recipe for our recipe of the week. In the second half, I have an interview with a woman who talks with us about the death of her mother. But first, Charlie, do you know what time it is?
Time for happy hour?
That might be it, but no.
Okay.
This is...
What time is it, Marianne?
This is season 1 of... No, this is episode 1 of season 5. We are officially entering season 5.
Season 5. Cool.
I know.
For 4 years.
Charlie,
very nice.
Charlie, what have you learned from these last years?
It's a long road to Tipperary, and it's but it doesn't feel long. I just really enjoyed this, enlightening folks, getting lots of feedback, sometimes angry responses, the occasional. Why are you talking about this? Why are you talking about death? I guess those folks didn't notice the title, Everyone Dies.
Maybe they thought we were being ironic.
No, practical, actually. It's everyone dies. And it's just neat to, it's just the most natural thing.
It's
so
like
I'm very happy to
falling off a log. I know. I can't believe so much time has gone by. It's just phenomenal.
I know, it's nuts.
But we're glad that y'all are out there listening and that we have listeners all over the world. And we love that. And stay with us. We appreciate you.
Hey, we have outlived COVID. Well, not really, but the COVID pandemic. I mean, we started roughly the same time.
We started exactly
the same time.
We
are still standing.
And somebody said to me when I started it, they said, from Facebook I didn't know said, you're very tone deaf to be talking about dying at this point in our history. It's like right at the beginning of COVID. And I wanted to say, sister, just strap yourself in. Yeah. We're going to have a bumpy ride.
Yep.
And I was so glad that we were there to help people with the multiple deaths they were experiencing. So I'm going to put my crystal ball away for a while and we'll just do this.
And not only to enlighten people and you with, everything and so much, explaining things to people. I of course always have a recipe to bring up or cocktails. And of course, folks, you should know these recipes are always brought up by Marianne. She does the research. I think I've contributed twice. But yeah, these are Marianne's, and these are always great.
Usually, if it has anything to do with alcohol, it's
mhm.
from Charlie.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So there. So our recipe isn't.
And if you
what?
Mhm.
So what? What are you going to say?
No, I was going to say, since you brought it up, Marianne, if you're looking for a nice fine rye, may I recommend Angel's Envy? It has a little something to do with death, actually. Look it up. It's very cool. Or maybe I'll explain it next week.
Well, I think whoever makes Angel's Envy needs to contact David so that they can sponsor a show or two.
Ooh. Yes.
We'll talk about rye. I don't know what rye is, but we'll talk about it. I think a rye bread with shmear butter, but I
had a rye bagel yesterday with toasted with cream cheese.
That sounds good.
All right.
Well,
and so moving along with food, have you ever had the experience of opening your lunchbox and finding out your mom packed you a Hostess Ding Dong as a surprise? Yeah, me neither. You, Marianne? She laughs. No,
okay. My mother didn't buy. My mother didn't buy cake. What kind of heathens do you think we were?
But
I had a Depression-era mother. She didn't spend her money on stuff.
I had a depressed mother, so it it all evened out in the end. But
he was not.
I know,
but it was not
just
really
yin and yang balance with the word depressed.
You had to do it.
Yeah. However, it is said that you are never too old to have a happy childhood, and we are definitely never too old to eat Ding Dong cake. Even better, it's this week's recipe. To mimic the classic cream-filled chocolate cakes enrobed in chocolate that are individually packed by Hostess, this cake starts with a simple chocolate cake recipe. Once the cakes are baked, they're stacked with a thick layer of cream filling. To top it all off, it's covered in a luscious chocolate ganache, or ganache, depending what side of the tracks you grew up on. Yes, this recipe has multiple layers and steps and maybe needs to be saved for a very special funeral lunch where you need chocolate to help process your feelings. Or make one and keep it for yourself, so you can get a strong dose of the healing power of chocolate filled with cream and topped with more chocolate.
Sounds like heaven.
Absolutely. So, in honor of the beginning of our 5th season, we have a travel destination where you can grab a slice of pizza and eat it next to the grave of Johnny Brown. The restaurant is the Pizza Al Fresco Courtyard, and hidden among the ferns, you will find the only cemetery in Palm Beach proper. It's technically a pet cemetery, but the spider monkey buried beneath one of the only 2 headstones was more than just a pet to jazz-era bon vivant Addison Meisner, whose Mediterranean revival architecture remains the signature style of Palm Beach resorts. Johnny Brown, the human monkey, was just one of Meisner's exotic and unusual pets. The monkey accompanied Meisner to all of his Gilded Age high society events and was invited as a special guest, along with his monkey companion Deuteronomy, to attend the Scopes trial, a trial in which a teacher was charged for teaching evolution. Meisner declined the invitation on behalf of the privileged primate. The trial wasn't the spider monkey's only brush with politics. Johnny Brown also ran for mayor, obviously backed and supported by Meisner. It's said that Johnny Brown and his canine graveyard mate, Laddie, playfully haunt the plaza and boutiques along Worth Avenue, and business owners instruct their employees to leave dishes of sliced bananas out at night for them. I'm thinking monkey grieving and pizza may make for an interesting night out. So keep that recipe in mind and this story in mind, and please go to our webpage for this week's recipe for Ding Dong Cake and additional resources for this program. Your tax-deductible donations are always welcome so that we can continue to offer you quality programming. Thank you in advance for making your donation at www.everyonedies.org. That's dies.org. Marianne?
Thank you, Charlie. The death of a parent is really a defining moment that changes our lives. We lose our perceived buffer between ourselves and death because our parents are our safety net, and their death is a significant rite of passage. I had the opportunity to interview Noelle, whom I had interviewed before her mother's death while she was caring for her mom. Today's interview takes place a few months after her mother's death. Let's have a listen. Your listeners that may have remembered the interview that I did with Noelle a little while ago, who was caring for her mom, who had skin cancer, but then as things had progressed, was receiving hospice care at home. And Noelle was one of her caregivers, and we did an interview just talking about what that was and all of the expectations that family members have when they have somebody in receiving hospice care, and stuff that you don't really know about until either you have a friend who's doing it or you yourself find out. So, Noelle, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you, Marianne. Appreciate you having me back.
And so I touched base with you a little while ago, and I kind of wanted to know how things had gone with Mom. And your mom died end of September?
Yeah, September 24th.
And so I offer you my condolences. I know that that's hard on many different levels, and sometimes can be, a relief on many different levels.
Yeah, it was a relief, but I really didn't expect to be feeling so shell-shocked. I thought I was okay with the whole thing. I mean, I just didn't know what I didn't know, to use that phrase. I didn't know. I'd never lost anybody before, and I didn't expect to feel so shocked. So just like a feeling of numbness, and I didn't cry necessarily that much. It was just shock. I think I'm still shocked, honestly.
Have you been able, because I know you're a pretty insightful woman, have you been able to put your finger on about what it is that's shocking to you or surprising to you?
Well, no, I mean, not really. I think just the fact that we went through this big traumatic event that went on for like 5 months, 5.5 months, and that it's, somebody just flipped the switch and it's over. And, there's the cleanup, of course, of the house and stuff, but, there's no more worrying. There's no more, obsessing about whether Mom is getting the right care. None of that. It's just she's just gone. And, it's unraveling everything that we learn about her as we go through her things, which is, another level of shocking, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we find out, we're able to keep certain things hidden that are just our personal business, and it's not until somebody's going through our thing that they might find out a variety of pieces of information or details about our life. And that could be with, a friend or a significant other or a parent, that they might have secrets that we never knew about. And there's even this, the whole idea with all the internet things is that people are saying you need to designate somebody who's going to, for example, has the password to your computer and who will go through your computer, because there might be things that you don't want your kids to see or other people to see. Probably not the case with your mom, but still, it's that level of discovering things about people once they're dead. So,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that. When she first laid down and went to bed, she was obsessively on her phone, and I didn't know what she was doing at the time. Eventually, she just put the phone down, and she, slept a lot. And it's funny because, we've all, or many people have become very addicted to their phones. After a while, we grabbed the phone because we wanted to, we had to look at things like our bank account and that kind of thing. But she would reach out for it all the time, and I would hand her she had a clicker that would turn her fan on and off and the light above her on the ceiling. Mm-hmm. I would hand her that, and it seemed to satisfy this urge that it lasted into this realm of being, on heavy drugs, but she still had like that cellular memory of reaching out with her hand to try to pick something up. Well, later on, we realized that she had deleted most of her contacts and all of her chat conversations off of her phone and most of her email. That's what she was doing.
Really?
Which made things, interesting later on. Here we are now. We're trying to figure things out, and we're like, everything's just gone. She deleted everything. Well, you can't, lesson for everybody, you really can't delete everything completely. Like, stuff comes back, whether it's in the trash or whatever, but we have managed to get a hold of what we needed for certain things. But she tried.
Isn't it interesting? And then it makes you, I don't know, it would make me wonder. It's like, well, what is it there that you don't want me to see? Or, or of course I would probably take it personally, but, it's like, what is it that's being hidden, or why do you need to delete that? I mean,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all I wanted to say about that. I'm sorry to interrupt you. No, what? Here's the thing for our listeners is that we can't see each other. So how when you're talking to somebody, if somebody's getting ready to talk, but we can't see each other. So it's a little bit harder, right?
Right. No, as it turns out, she had been scammed, and she had given away a fair amount of her money to a scammer. And she was so ashamed of it. She told me about it when I first started visiting her before she got so sick that she couldn't get out of bed. She had told me about it, and it was a huge relief for her to tell me. But she deleted, the extent of that scam, which had gone on for 2 years. And she gave away a lot of money. So that's what she was doing. Yeah, we figured that out at the end of the day, which is sad.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's so sad that, that you feel ashamed either because, you were vulnerable, I guess, maybe because you were vulnerable enough to be scammed. I think that would probably be the thing that would bother me, that, not so much that I lost the money, but that I was vulnerable in that way.
Yeah, it breaks my heart. It just breaks my heart to know that she was that sad inside, that she was reaching out to complete strangers for some feeling of validation or a hope for a better, to get, they would tell her she's going to get X if she gives them Y. And, that just goes on and on and on, and it was clear from the text messages that we found that after a while she knew she was being scammed, but yet she continued to do it. So there was a depth of, distortion in her psyche that I sort of knew was there, but I just didn't know the extent of it. And that's the hardest part about all this for me. I'm trying to come to terms with how much pain my mother must have been in for so long that this was where she turned for some kind of pain relief, And
that's, and then I don't know, I'm sharing with you where my head would go. My head would be like, well, and so what else didn't I know? What else was going on? I mean, I don't know if your head goes there, but it's that idea that, loneliness was a depression,
we do all kinds of things to manage those symptoms, and like many older adults, not many, but a lot of older adults, to manage their depression or their loneliness, can turn to alcohol or can turn to drugs or do other risky behaviors that put them in jeopardy. So
yeah,
that's really hard to kind of take in and digest and to figure out what to do with that. Does that bring any guilt or feelings like that, like for you or for your sister?
Well, not so much for me, so I won't speak for my sister, but I think that also there was an element of, I didn't realize how many pharmaceutical drugs she was taking that were mood altering. And so, yeah, totally. First, there was the drugs. We found a whole ton of pharmaceuticals that dated back to 2004. And she would have them in like a bag with just like a note that says good for pain. And there was morphine in there. There was like heavy stuff that you would give to like a bipolar person. I only know that because I had a friend who was bipolar at one point. And so she was taking these heavy, heavy drugs. And when I look back at the timeline of her life and my interactions with her, I realized some of the behaviors that she started to exhibit around the time that, all of this seems to have started, around 2004 or so, it sort of made sense. I was like, oh, that's when she started to seem really like unreachable. Because back in the 90s, we would interact, we would read books, not together, but, she would read a book, I'd read a book, like The Celestine Prophecy, for example. Great book if you've never read it. Yeah. And we discussed it endlessly. And she was so, like, fascinated by it and enlightened by it. And we both were. And we would talk about, well, what do you think that means? And blah, blah, blah. But then somewhere around the early 2000s, I think to manage her depression, she was put on pharmaceuticals, not to my knowledge. And that's when that all just stopped happening. And, fast forward to 2018, when I learned that she has cancer and she decides that she's going to go the route of getting immunotherapy, which, by the way, I don't judge anybody for their choices, but I was saying to my mother, like, but Mom, you and I have always been into holistic healthcare your entire life. Like, why are you not walking that walk now of all times? This is when, like, all of that work that you've done up to this point to kind of understand, various aspects of existence, like, this is the point when you bring all that out of your back pocket and you use it. And I was completely confused by the fact that she didn't go that route. She was just so scattered and depressed and just like, well, like, whatever. It doesn't even matter. None of that alternative stuff is covered by Medicaid, so I'm not even going to bother. And I was like, what are you saying? Like, you'll take whatever you can get for free, but you'll continue to spend money on ridiculous things? So there's a lot to unravel here. You can imagine, Marianne.
Yeah.
The rabbit hole is deep and wide.
Yeah. What was her answer to that? Or was it she just too depressed to use the psychic energy to pull it apart?
She deflected and attacked in response. She couldn't take what I was saying. She couldn't take it in. I don't know why. She had built up some kind of barrier, some kind of emotional wall. Maybe she felt like that whole path was too painful, because goodness knows, when you do go the path of holistic healthcare, it does require you to do a lot of, like, facing a lot of emotional demons. And that's hard work. That's really hard to do. Yeah. But, it's a way to go. And she was just not interested in facing those demons. It just wasn't going to happen for her.
And plus you have to do a lot more work in that holistic road that maybe she didn't have the psychic energy to do. It's much easier to go to an infusion center and, get a treatment rather than do all the other stuff that the holistic pathway would require. Do you think that would be accurate?
Yeah, there is something to that. But there was a point when I had visited her in 2019, and I went to her house, and we sat down and we had lunch together. Her house was very neat. It was very orderly. We grilled some vegetables. We had some chicken. The dogs seemed like they were doing well. She looked like she was very well put together. She's a beautiful woman. And I thought, all right, cool. She's on a good path. I felt a peace around her, you know. And then at some points, I guess it wasn't something she could sustain over the long haul. But even up to the very end, I remember when she first went to bed, she said, "Oh, I haven't taken any of my supplements in days." And I was confused. I was like, "What supplements are you taking?" Various things that she was still pursuing, But she was just, it was a scattershot, it was just all over the place at that point.
Mm-hmm. So how, if you're, comfortable talking with me about it, how was the very end, right around the time of her death for you?
So at the very end, I didn't see her that much. I'm not going to lie. She had said to me at one point, "Thank you for everything." I told her I loved her. She said she loved me. And that happened when she was still talking and still had some amount of cognizance. But then, very shortly thereafter, she didn't really wake up very much. She was just out of it. She would wake up and she would cry or she would be in pain. She had a caregiver. I live an hour away. So I would see her like once every 2 weeks. And I don't regret that decision at all. I was able to do it, so I did it. I just kept, her in my mind at all times. I prayed all the time. I got, semi-daily updates from my sister, what was going on. But then, when I did visit her, and there were times when I had to be there like overnight, it was very traumatic because I would not sleep. I would just stare. We had a camera set up that came through the phone, and I would just stare at her face the entire night. I would try to sleep. I would fall asleep for like 30 seconds, and I would wake up and look at the phone, and she hadn't moved. And so there was just, she was just mostly out of it. And I just tried to keep her, out of as much pain as possible. And yeah, so that was mostly it the last several weeks of her life.
Why do you think you were so hypervigilant when you were there?
I didn't want her to be in pain. Terrified that she would be in pain. I was also terrified she would try to get out of bed again because that had been so traumatic when she had been trying to go to the bathroom earlier on when I had been watching her,
Right. So maybe it was a little bit of that PTSD of that experience.
Totally, yes. There was a point even when she was in a hospital bed. We moved her from her room into the front room in a hospital bed. She was still shaking on, the rails of the bed, trying to get out. This woman was so tough. She's just unbelievable.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Now, I'm going to go back to something you just said. You said that before she kind of stopped talking, that she was able to tell you that she loved you. What was that about? What happened? I don't remember
exactly. Yeah, I don't remember the exact circumstances. Maybe I gave her something to drink. I don't even remember exactly what it was. I was trying to care for her in some way, and she just sort of roused herself, and she looked me in the face and said, "Thank you for everything." And I said, "You're welcome, and I love you." And, she said, "I love you back." And then she just sort of laid down. And that was really the last conversation, if you will, that I had with her. And then after that, when I stopped going there as much, I didn't feel bad about it. I was like, our part's complete. We said goodbye. And the rest of it is just for everybody else,
Right. But isn't that a wonderful final conversation to be told, as her child, that she loves you? And those are the words that, I don't know if they make up for everything, before, because, everybody knows mothers and daughters very rarely have easy relationships continuously throughout all their lives. But for it to end on that note, I don't know, it makes me really happy for you. I don't know how you felt about it, but.
Well, yeah, and that leads into the death experience, which was just so overwhelming, and it's been overwhelming ever since. She loved me. I know that she loved me. I know that she was a troubled individual because of her past, her childhood, but I know that she loved me with all her heart. She had a fierce heart, let's put it that way. And after she had passed, I was getting, it was probably like a week, it was a week after the funeral. I was getting an acupuncture treatment, and this song came on. It was called, it's Wild Horses by the Rolling Stones.
Oh,
and the words, geez, I'm going to break down. The words go something like, childhood living is easy to do. The things you wanted, I bought them for you. And then the song is probably not about a mother and a daughter, but, the refrain, wild horses couldn't drag me away from you. And I felt this overwhelming feeling of love come through, and it lit up my entire being in a way that you wouldn't. It's very difficult to. It has to be experienced. Let's put it that way. But I know that she's different now. I know that she's, obviously without the body. The love I feel from her is there, and it's available all the time. And it comes when I am mostly at peace with myself and clear-headed. It's almost like she's on a different frequency now that I can tune into. It requires me to be at that frequency to hear her, and I can hear her voice. I smell her perfume, and it's quite. But it's not her perfume exactly. It's like a rose's. It's very overwhelming, and it was quite an experience, and I'll never forget it. And I still can tune into it now, which is just an amazing gift that she gave me. Just that whole level of love that she brought into my being.
Are you able to tune into that frequency when you need it most, or do you have to be at peace in order to tune into it?
Well, this goes into esoteric practice, right? There's a spiritual teacher that I follow called Matt Kahn, and he teaches about how you can comfort yourself, and you basically turn love towards yourself, where you can put your hand on your own heart, and you can say, I love you, and you can say all of the things that you would like to hear from somebody, but you say them to yourself. And I've been doing that for quite a while, several years now. And now that I have that sort of embedded in my psyche, if I do that kind of thing, I can smell her perfume right now, as a matter of fact, probably because I'm talking about her. It comes through. I enter that frequency when I enter that level of self-love.
That's really fascinating. I'm a Reiki master, so for listeners who don't know what Reiki is, it's a healing energy of a Japanese tradition, and you can do Reiki healing on pets or plants or other people, but you can also do it on yourself. And it's also that some people will describe that Reiki energy as pure love or God's love. And so that kind of resonates with your mom, your mom's love that she's able to kind of give to you without the restriction of her body or the restriction of her personal trauma or whatever. It's just there for the taking. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah. This whole experience has really changed me in that respect. That the relationship I had with my mother the first 35 years was very troubled. It was very tumultuous and very combative. after I had like a, deep spiritual awakening around, 44, 45 years old, and I'm 50 now, my relationship with her changed drastically because I no longer fought with her at all. She would say something mean, and I would say, I just really want the best for you. I don't care about that. I really just wish the best for you, and I love you. And I was very consistent about that. Maybe occasionally I would get sucked into, taking the bait and fighting, but kind of rarely. And now this has kind of taken me to even a new level of that love, where I'm just enthralled by the whole human experience, how rich it is, and how this is the experience my mother wanted to have. She came to Earth to love her children, to love her grandchildren so much, yet at the same time she was unable to find it for herself. But that's okay. That's just an experience that she wanted to have, and she had it. And I bet you she's on the other side saying, boy, what a ride. That was awesome, good, bad, or indifferent. She lived it all. She was amazing, is amazing.
And so you still, do you get a sense that she's on another plane, that her spirit is still active, or what is your thought or conception about what death is?
My conception, I listen to a lot of this channeler called Cryon and Lee Carroll. He talks about how in your DNA is the energy or the seed atoms of people you've had in your life. I think it's called entanglement in physics terms. Hope I'm saying that right. Entanglement, where wherever you have been in contact with somebody, they're always a part of you, even if you never see them again. So my mother is actually inside of me and a part of me, is the way I feel it. She's always accessible. I think it's beyond like the human ability to really comprehend how that all works. I just look at it as kind of a multi-dimensional kind of connection that we have now. And, but yet even so, as I was cleaning out her house the other day, I took her refrigerator because it's a refrigerator I would never spend this much money on. But they were trying to get it out of her house, and they were having a lot of trouble. And I can't stand to watch people move stuff because I'm terrified something's going to go wrong. So I left the house. I was sitting out front. I looked down on the ground. There's a feather. And I was like, okay, Mom. Like, even when I'm not totally tuned into her, the signs and the signals still come through. And I walked over. I sat down in my car. I'm sorry.
What's the meaning of the feather?
Yeah, feathers are supposedly a sign that a loved one is near or an angel is near, offering you comfort. It's just like hey, we're on your side. We're watching out for you.
Okay. I hadn't heard that, so that's why I needed that explanation. So sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. I make too many assumptions, but yeah, the feather thing is it's fascinating, and it happens all the time, even now. I see a feather and I stop and I look around and I say, okay, what is there something I need to know, or are you just saying hi?
So you were saying you went to your car and did something happen?
Yeah. So I saw the feather and I was like, all right, okay, you're telling me everything's going to be fine. Okay. But still, I'm pacing around. I'm pacing in front of the house, and I see another feather. And I said, okay, all right, fine. I'm going to sit down in the car, and I'm going to relax for a few minutes. And I start, messing around on Facebook, and somebody had posted this song, Hallelujah, by Leonard Cohen. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, so this is my moment, fine. And I listened to it while they were trying to get this refrigerator out of the house. It took them a really long time, probably an hour. Sat there, I listened to this song. I cried my eyes out. And I felt lighter when it was done, but I realized everything was going to be okay. I just had to sit back and just let it all happen,
Which is, I think, probably a good metaphor for life, is that we, I think the humans believe that they can control a lot of things that we really have no control over, and that we might all live a better life if we kind of laid back and let it all happen and not feel so much of a need to manage and control other things.
Yeah, even the death process, just an awesome, terrible, emotionally wrenching, but an awesome experience, because you realize just how very little is in your control. I actually feel safer walking this earth having watched my mother go through this, because it's not so easy to die. If it's not your time, you're not dying. I know this for sure now, because her body, what she went through with her body, she didn't eat but barely for, the whole time she was laying in bed, she barely ate, barely took in water, and her heart kept beating. And now I realize that there are just so many things going on so many levels. Like, there are so many people who know about her sickness, or knew about her sickness, knew that she was dying, who had to have their own impact. And, there's always an opportunity with every impact that comes to you. And she was just there to create that experience for so many people. And it wasn't until all that work was done that she was going to pass. It wasn't going to be a minute sooner at all. And there was nothing anybody could do about it. We could pray and we could cry and say, "Oh God, please take her. She's in so much pain." I believe prayer is very important, and I believe that it's useful for yourself and for the person in pain. But having said that, no, you're not going until, your higher self is ready to go, until everybody's, at the edge there ready with you.
Right. And that's what, in hospice, we always say, we don't hasten and we don't, stop death. It's like, it'll come when it comes. It's, allowing natural death. And our society has a real hard time with letting things happen when they're going to happen. Babies have to come out at our schedules or the doctor's schedules, and death, we think should happen when we're ready. Everybody's home, so now she or he needs to die. It's like, no, he'll die when it's his time to die. And I've as a hospice nurse would have people say, well, when is it going to be? It'll be whenever it's going to be. It's like you can't hasten and you can't postpone. It'll be what it'll be. And that could be a hard lesson for people.
It's a good lesson. It's important.
Yeah, it is. Well, I'm hope we'll be able to chat with you again, Noelle, as you go through this experience. I think one of the things I enjoy talking with you is that you're enlightened and informed and kind of willing to look at all the different planes of life. It's not just this concrete one that we know, is that you kind of tune into other aspects, and it's fascinating to chat with you. And my thoughts and prayers are with you and your family. And
thank you, Marianne.
On behalf of our listeners, thank you for being willing to share that. I know that that's not easy.
Yeah, no, it's how I'm made, and it's just the way I've always been. So I'm always happy to talk, and thank you so much for the opportunity. It's very healing to discuss this.
Good. Well, like I said, I love chatting with you, so maybe we can do it again. Isn't that an incredible story, Charlie?
It is. It's just, it just really, of course, all of us had mothers, and we all react differently, but just, it really is. I don't have the words.
Incredible.
It really is. Yeah.
I'm so grateful for her to share that with everybody.
So with that, please stay tuned for the continuing saga of Everyone Dies. And thank you for listening. This is Charlie Navarrete. And from Stephen Wright, when I die, I'm donating my body to science fiction.
And I'm Marianne Matzo, and we'll see you next week. Remember, every day is a gift. Goodbye.
Bye.
This podcast does not provide medical advice. All discussion on this podcast, such as treatments, dosages, outcomes, charts, patient profiles, advice, messages, and any other discussion are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your primary care practitioner or other qualified health providers with any questions that you may have regarding your health. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard from this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Everyone Dies does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, practitioners, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in this podcast. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast by persons appearing on this podcast at the invitation of Everyone Dies or by other members is solely at your own risk.